know it was your last chance. And I think that's kind of how we should talk every day. We should talk like it's our last chance, it's our last opportunity. For Randy Pausch, who the book was based on, it did become his last opportunity to speak, and it's where the success of this came from. So what I would like to do is talk to you a little bit about some stories, Tricksters and Butterflies. I'm going to take you through a number of different stories though. First, I'd like to introduce myself. I walk in two worlds. I am, or actually I'll change that. I walk in many worlds. I balance the ideas of being a Western academic with the ideas of being tied to a number of indigenous communities, the Nisga'a, the Haida, my own Anishinaabe. And so I try to balance those out and find the stories that make sense. Today, as we are both speaking virtually, but also in Blackfoot territory where I teach and where I live, it's important to recognize the Sitsikatapi that the land Lethbridge sits on is actually the home of Old Man Napi, creator and his first wife, the Moon. Napi is also a trickster within these stories. And so I want to start with a story from these territories, and it's a story that I have a similar story in my nation, but here in these territories, there's SkyWoman. So we're going to start with the story of SkyWoman. Before I do that, I would like to congratulate all of you. I would like to congratulate all the University of Lethbridge graduates in the class of 2020. I would like to congratulate the Indigenous students, the business students, and the Indigenous business students. Congratulations to you all. This is the journey I would like to take you on, and I'm going to do it very quickly in just a few minutes. We've done the territorial acknowledgements, we've done the congratulations, so we're going to go through SkyWoman's story. We're going to talk about belonging and a traditional Indigenous idea of witnessing and being a witness and community. I'm going to tell you a story from my territory, the story of Nanabush and the Butterflies. And then I'm going to come to your story, and I'm going to tell you congratulations again, because I am amazed at what you've accomplished and where you are now. So SkyWoman, this is a piece, many of the paintings that you see are paintings that I did because this is how we communicate. This is how we as Ojibwe write. And so the story of SkyWoman is a Blackfoot story. And SkyWoman, the important parts of the story, I can't tell you the whole story in the time that I have. Sometimes these stories can take days to tell. I'm telling it very quickly. But SkyWoman lived in a place that was almost perfect. She lived in a place in the sky. Everybody was happy, except for SkyWoman. She wasn't happy, and she wasn't happy because she was told by the powers that be that there was one thing she could not do, and that was to dig near the tree. And so what SkyWoman did, being a little bit of a contrary, as many magical beings are, she dug by the tree, and she dug a hole, and as the hole got bigger, she went further and further into the hole, and she fell into the hole and fell into our sky. When she fell into our sky, she started to fall down, and what happened was the winged nation, the winged beings came, and they gathered her up in the sky, and they dropped her on the back of a turtle. And there was a giant turtle, and as she fell down into the sky, she fell onto the back of the turtle with the help of the winged nations, and there was really nothing for her. There was nothing, and she was a little bit panicked at what she would do next. But the first beings came around, they gathered, and they talked about the fact that down very deep below all of the water that she saw, there was the earth still resided. So she asked for just a speck of the earth. And they brought up that speck of earth, and SkyWoman started to sing to that piece of speck of earth. And she told the stories that she remembered, the beauty of the place that she had come from. And she told of the dreams that she had for her future and for the future of where she was now going to reside. And as she sang those stories into the speck, it started to spin, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And as it grew, it got so big that she laid it onto the back of the turtle. And this is why we call, in indigenous nations, this is why we call this Turtle Island, is because of we are on the back of the turtle that has given its back to us to support us as humans. There are many important aspects of this story. One of them is what SkyWoman does is she talks about her dream. She finds people to witness who she is and what she's doing. Now, witnessing is a very important piece among the Nisga'a and the West Coast nations, but it is also important among the Powwow nations in the East. Witnesses are called to recognize important events, to recognize great accomplishments, to recognize powerful leaders and changes in the community. And SkyWoman found those in the first beings. SkyWoman created her own community. And she did that by singing, by telling her story to all of the first beings. The first beings agreed to be together on Turtle Island, each expressing their particular gifts and responsibilities. Turtle took responsibility for supporting everybody, but the wing beings took responsibilities, the water beings took responsibilities, the four-leggeds took responsibilities. The story is used, this story here is used by the Blackfoot to teach community, to teach the idea of belonging, and to teach responsibility. Because people who have witnessed your story are there to confirm and check and ensure that you maintain the story that you're telling. All of this is to tell you that as we move through this time, you can see that there are times forever. Since the beginning of time, since before the land was here, where people were afraid, where people didn't know what to do next. And what they did is they went and found community and shared their gifts. SkyWoman shared her gifts. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to find a way to share your gifts as well. Part of that gift is your story. Among the Ojibwe, what we're taught is that what Creator gave humans is the ability to dream and to dream a story of their own, like the way SkyWoman did. What I would like to tell you next is a story. I'm going to move you far into the future of Turtle Island, to a time when another trickster, another magical being, Nanabush, from my territory, was walking among the territory. And these are what homes look like in my territory. These are wigwams. And Nanabush was walking through the territories of the Ojibwe, and he came upon a place where suddenly the earth was quiet. There was no wind, so very much not like Lethbridge. There was no wind, the birds weren't singing, there was no sounds. And Nanabush was suddenly panicked at the idea that this community, this space that he had come into was quiet, that everything was so isolated. And this may sound familiar to you. It may sound like what we just went through just before we started to open our doors again. Everything was quiet. The animals weren't speaking. And Nanabush came upon these houses, these wigwams, and called out and said, "Hello, hello, it's me, Nanabush. I'm here. Is there anyone there?" And there was no sound. And he walked around, and finally, unsure what to do, he stepped forward. And when he stepped forward, he saw a set of eyes come to the doorway, but immediately get pulled back. And he was again upset. So he went down to the water, and he gave an offering of tobacco and put the tobacco down to the water that was running past. and said, help me, I'm unclear. I don't know what, I don't know what to do. And with the offering and the gift, he got an answer. And the answer, and I'm going to use some pens that I have at my desk because I forgot to get pebbles. But as he listened to the water run across the pebbles, it sounded kind of like that. And for Nanabush, he thought that sound sort of sounded like laughter. It was like the water was laughing, and the water and the pebbles together as a community were creating laughter. And Nanabush thanked the waters, and he picked up some of the pebbles, and he walked back into the community and said, hello, it's me, Nanabush. I want to share something with you. And he looked down into the pebbles, and he rubbed them into his hands and said, look. And he called the people, and eventually what happened was some of the small children came through the doorway, and they saw hands try to pull them back, but the children came forward, and they looked into Nanabush's hands, and he rubbed them together, and they started to smile. And the parents came out of the wigwams fearful for their children and wanting to protect their children. And Nanabush called them over and said, look what I have, and showed them how the pebbles running across each other created this sound of laughter. And as he was showing the parents, the elders, the grandparents, the parents of the parents came forward, and they yelled a warning. They said, be careful, this is Nanabush. Nanabush is a trickster, and he's not good. He's mean, and he'll do bad stuff to us. And Nanabush called out and said, no, I promise, come look. And everyone came forward, and when everyone had gathered around, Nanabush took the pebbles and he threw them up into the air, and everybody started to look up at the pebbles, the parents with fear for their children, and the elders started to yell out, I told you it's Nanabush. He always does bad stuff. He's mean, he's nasty. When he does change is bad. And everybody looked, and just as the pebbles hit the top of their arc, what happened was Nanabush breathed up into the sky like SkyWoman, and all of the pebbles transformed into butterflies. Now, I don't know if you've ever sat and watched a child chase a butterfly. But when a child chases a butterfly, it can't help but laugh. And I don't know if you've ever stopped and watched a parent watch a child chase a butterfly. But a child chasing a butterfly and laughing, a parent can't help but laugh. And the elders watching their children laugh, the parents laugh, couldn't help but laugh. And suddenly the wind started to blow, and the world came back to life. And that's the story of Nanabush. Now, I've told you a couple of stories. I tell you stories because I'm a storyteller. I gather stories. I gather stories from people in the past. I gather stories from today, and I gather stories for a future. What I want you to do is think about your story. I want you to think about what the story you want to tell people, the story you are going to sing to your community. Trickster and magical beings are in our world, and they bring about change. The butterfly in Ojibwe symbolism, in the paintings that I do, is about change. You are butterflies. You are the tricksters. You are the magical beings that will change the world. It seems like it's a lot of weight on your shoulders, but we are all here to help you with that. Your job now as graduates is to find your people, find your community, help them change, help Lethbridge change, help wherever you find yourself change by sharing your fears, sharing your joys, the gifts you have, the gift of being able to dream. Share that, share it in the form of your story. That is what I want you to take away with today. That is my gift to you. If I could have one opportunity to tell people one piece of wisdom, it is to find your story and hold your story and share your story. With that, I would like to say congratulations. If this was my last lecture, what I would want to send you away with is an understanding that stories are magic. Indigenous tricksters, you may notice, their stories don't end. Neither is yours. Be the trickster. Change the world. We are here together as community, as the University of Lethbridge community, to share your stories, to share the story of this great accomplishment. We are here to witness that, to be witness to the end of this part in the beginning of the next part of your journey. To celebrate you and to send you on your way. Find your community as you walk forward like Nanabush did and SkyWoman did. Hold them. Hold them responsible for holding you responsible to your story, to your gifts, for standing up for your fears, for the story that you will carry with you for the rest of your life. This is the revisit. Congratulations, University of Lethbridge, class of 2020. As you travel on this journey, gathering your story and gathering your people, travel safe. Awa, Magwech. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Don, for your last lecture. Your artwork is quite astounding and inspiring. And so thank you for sharing that story. And I really liked the focus of your artwork on change. And as you said, that's so important to sort of what's happening with these students graduating right now and in our world today, and as they move forward in this world and find their place within it. I also really liked how you related, all of your storytelling to help students to develop their own story and find a way to tell that story and reflect on the past to help them tell that story. I found that just to be, just really, really interesting, and that you go back to those stories to help you tell a good story in the future. So we have some time now for questions and answers from the audience. So again, please use the Q&A to ask questions. But I do have one already from Brian Kolb. He was curious as to whether all North American Indigenous stories include Turtle Island, or is this just some of them?
So I am not an expert on all Indigenous nations. There's, depending on how you're addressing nation, between 60 and 120 different nations. What I can tell you is that everybody on this side of, not counting the Inuit, everyone on this side of the Rocky Mountains, I believe, does have a Turtle Island variation. Every nation that I've ever spoken to does have a flood story and does have a time when we were covered by water. There are stories of just a time of great darkness. There are stories, and within the Indigenous communities that I've been honored to be a part of and share stories with, there is always a trickster who helps change that world.
I have another question here from Richard Lee Tai. Saying thanks for the talk, and he's wondering if you could touch on how the Ojibwa see the afterlife, and you're mentioning how that stories are continuous, so what happens to someone after they pass away in that culture.
Again, many of these ideas are held, and as I said in the talk, some of these pieces take days to tell, and in my culture, members of the Medowin society would be the correct person to specifically answer this. What happens when we pass over is, the way I was taught it is you wake up and there is a green light, and you again can hear the water. You can hear the water laughing on your left-hand side, and you follow that the water and the green light for 4 days, and then you come to the big water, and the big water is where you pass over.
Interesting. I have a curious question for you. So you touched a bit in your talk about reconciliation a little bit, and so I'm just kind of curious, as an Indigenous scholar, how do you see that working sort of in this new world of isolation that we're living in currently?
So for me, I'm not sure that what the story of Nanabush and the butterflies, what I take away from it is that we will always have times of isolation, but we will always have to, we as humans, as good humans, have to find community. So we will step back out. And with regards to reconciliation, that is work that is not done. We just celebrated or are coming to the celebration of the 5th year of the TRC report. And part of my work is to ensure that this conversation of reconciliation doesn't disappear. In the next crisis that we have. So what we're seeing now is with the marches and the gatherings that are happening, we find as humans we have to gather, and whether it is a Black Lives Matter or I don't know more, we will continually come together to actually make sure that, again, our stories are told and our stories are heard.
So, you know, you obviously have all these great stories as part of your culture. And so, you know, does that make it easier? Do you find that makes it easier for you? As you said, you're balancing these two worlds of sort of Indigenous life and the Western world that you also are part of. And so do you find that it's easier to tell your story with that Indigenous half there? And sort of where do the people that are listening to this talk go to find their story if they don't have that sort of cultural background and that experience of doing this?
I'm asked this quite often. People come and say, you know, aren't you lucky? You have all of this Indigenous knowledge that is right there for you. And the reality is that for many Indigenous people, it's not right there. So there are two things that I see. One is that we are all Indigenous. So we all have stories. That's the first part. The second part is that these stories don't come easy. And these stories come with responsibilities, and that what happens is you have to work for, one, the stories of your culture, the stories that are sitting there for you to take up. These stories are gifts to you. But then there is the work of finding where these stories resonate with you as an individual and with your individual story. And then with those stories and with your own story, you have the responsibility to present it forward and allow it to be witnessed and challenged and be held responsible to it. Both the stories of your community, the stories of your culture, and your own individual story.
Well, we have time for maybe one more question from the audience. So maybe just see if anybody else has any more questions. And if doesn't appear anybody's putting anything forward yet. So with that, I'd like to thank you again, Dawn, for your wonderful last lecture and sharing your story and how to tell a story. And this has been very eye-opening and enlightening to me, myself personally, I know that. And we'll move on to our 6th speaker of the day. So thank you very much, Dawn.
Thank you very much. Congratulations, everybody.